Yes, thank you. So as you say, Rainforest Alliance is an international non-profit of an organization working exactly at this intersection of business, agriculture and forest. And through that, we're building to protect forest, to improve livelihoods of the producers and also the communities around. Rainforest Alliance was founded in 1986, and we aim to create a better future for both people and nature in a balanced manner through making responsible business the new normal. And then the frog. So frog originally, when the organization first was created, was selected because we started with our certification in forest and in bananas, and in those ecosystems, the little frog that is in our logo is kind of a representative or an indicator of biodiversity health. So we stayed with that, and now the little frog stands for a better future for people and nature. So it has become our symbol. Yes, so Rainforest Alliance is most known by for our certification, but as a matter of fact, we do more than that. We have 4 intervention strategies, and those complement each other and create synergies. So the first one is certification, what we now call reimagining certification through our new recently launched certification system. The launch of this new certification system will be accompanied by a very detailed rollout system. So over the course of the next years, if you are working with Rainforest Alliance, either as a farmer or a company, you will receive people will receive emails from us. We will provide training either online or in the field, also depending how COVID is going to develop. And that will be that will be the first entry point. Besides that, where we have the opportunity, we will complement these kind of efforts with donor and company funded projects. And these can be focused either on deepening the training that we can do with our own funding, or building out our activities to surrounding landscapes and communities to really make our impact visible and active at the landscape and community level. Those are the 2 main intervention areas. And then we also have tailored programs where we work with companies directly and producers to test some new innovations, which we can then later build into our certification system. And we have what we call advocacy, which is the work we do with governments, trying to support changes in public policies, which are important for our producers, which is also a complementary strategy. And with that, yes, we really envision and hope that what's on the tin is really what's in there. Yes. So we've published our new certification system just now in 1st of July, and the implementation of the new standard and the whole system will become mandatory in 1st of July 2021, which means that we have this whole year to train ourselves, to train our trainers, to train our certificate holders and our supply chain actors. So really making sure that all the questions are addressed and everybody is prepared. So then how does it work? So if a farm wants to become certified, they first need to prepare for their audit, right? They can download the standard, they can download all the documents, they can request the training, they can request a pre-audit. So once they are ready, then they can apply for an audit. And on our website, we have a list of certification bodies, which are external organizations who do the audit, that are active in each of the countries. So with all the information of how to contact them. So they can contact them, host the audit, and then the auditors will inform them whether they are ready or whether there are still things that need to be improved. And once they have gone successfully through an audit, then they will obtain the seal, and with that they can start selling the product. They can put the project on the marketplace on our traceability platform, and we also support creating connections between supply and demand. Okay, great. So you asked me what are the benefits, right? What are the benefits? Well, the approach of our certification is integrated, meaning that there are economic, social, and environmental criteria. So through the implementation of the criteria, we know, because we have proven this through impact studies, that the producers will produce more efficiently. We have various impact studies that identify increased economic benefit just through the implementation of the criteria themselves. For the workers, it's a better place to work. The conditions are better. The environmental conditions are also better. So from the practices themselves, there are lots of benefits and impact to obtain. And besides that, and that's of course the first question that producers always ask, like there is also a premium linked to the sale of the coffee, and also there many producers say that for them the most important benefit in the first instance is to have more direct and more secure market outlets. But on the long term, it becomes the positive benefits from the practices themselves become more evident, and that's like the most important long-term objective. Yes, that's a really important question. But before I get into differentiation, I would first like to emphasize that the three of us, in this case Rainforest Alliance, 4C, and Fair Trade, we all believe in the urgent need to transform agriculture practices and share the belief that certification by credible systems such as ours is one way to help that transformation, right? We also recognize that certification is just a piece of it. We collaborate a lot together. We work on platforms together. So as we are NGOs, I just do want to emphasize that we're not necessarily competition. We complement each other. Producers are free to choose, and they have these different options. So now, what are the differences, and why do we still exist? Why do all of us exist, right? So we have different nuances and different strategies to implement our goals. In the case of for fair trade, for example, the standards are designed to tackle poverty, and also they guarantee a minimum price for their product. So the emphasis is really on that. Whereas our focus is much more on the impact that can be delivered by the sustainable practices themselves, as I just explained. On the one hand, right, and especially because it's an integrated approach, so the agriculture practices together with the economic practices really increase productivity, and with that also the profitability. But at the same time, we do also, of course, work at the marketplace, and we also have new concepts which we will explore later on to improve and promote shared responsibility. But we do really focus on empower producer, provide them with knowledge in farming as a business and knowledge about the marketplace so that they can really enter into that negotiation, which we support them on. Now, if you compare ourselves with 4C, we can see that the content of the principles of the 4C code and the Rainforest Alliance standards are pretty similar. They also have an integrated approach topic-wise, but the entry levels for 4C are much lower. So whereas we might have the same types of criteria, in order to be Rainforest Alliance certified, you have to comply with a much higher amount of those. And that is because the 4C code has been designed and is positioned itself as an entry-level approach. So their main focus is inclusiveness, really making sure that all producers or most producers can have access to it. And that by definition also means that as they focus on inclusiveness, the level of impact or the level of requirements and thus also impact obtained is not as profound as it can be with the Rainforest Alliance standard. So that's a bit how we complement each other. We also recognize that we try to be as inclusive as possible, but there's a quite delicate balance between inclusiveness and depth of impact. So that's why it's really important to have all these different systems so that producers themselves can choose what works best for them. Yes, and here the nuances are important also, right? So indeed we are changing our approach to the management of human rights issues. Violation of human rights still is and will always continue to be a core requirement, which means that compliance or incompliance is not accepted. But there has been a change, because in our current system, when some of these issues were identified, producers, they were called zero tolerance. So producers could not address their issues and reapply again for certification. They were banned in some cases for 5 years. So what we've learned from that approach is that oftentimes the violations were hidden. They were, or if they were identified, they were really difficult for the auditors to grasp them. So we've just seen that, unfortunately, that approach didn't work. And also by banning those producers, those workers in those farms that were banned were basically off worse, because nobody was putting any attention to them anymore. Now, it's easy for us because we don't have those farms in our system anymore, so we don't have to worry about them. Companies don't have to worry about them, but we're not solving anything. And our mission is creating impact, helping to solve solutions. So we do want to continue, so we do want to take on the challenge to try to make that change. But every abuse that happens to a worker is a human rights violation, and it needs to be fought aggressively. But now we understand that fighting aggressively is not necessarily banning them, but starting a conversation. It means, and that's where our address and assess system comes in, which puts much more emphasis on prevention, on analyzing the risk in detail. Where does it come from? How does it happen? And then on developing a remediation schedule together. So it can happen that farmers where this has been identified are put on hold. They have to demonstrate how they're going to remediate this and how are they going to plan to solve this. They might not be able to sell certified products in that period, depending on the situation, but they're not necessarily out of the system for a couple of years. Yes. Those are the areas where this approach. Yes. So our standard and assurance team have developed a couple of tools, very detailed tools, to do this kind of analysis. They are definitely the experts in that. So I think for much deeper questions on this topic, I would prefer to refer to one of our human rights or child labor experts. Yes, so there are a couple of new concepts in our new certification systems, which really demonstrates the new organization as we are now. Through those years, we have been able to harvest the best of both organizations. It was a lot of work. We had wanted maybe to publish our standards half a year earlier, but we really needed to take that deep dive and get everything right. So a couple of new concepts in our new certification system and our work overall, because this also affects the other intervention areas. The first one is the concept of what we call shared responsibility. And that comes from the recognition of the fact that the risks and the costs of certification was too much on the shoulders of the producers themselves, and the benefits more in the rest of the chain. So we have a couple of new concepts there, like promoting responsible business practices, the launching of new concepts of sustainability differential and sustainability investment, which I can talk about, I think, later on. You have some questions, right? And that's one package of practices which have elements in the farm standard and in the chain of custody standard. Then we have our climate smart agriculture. Climate smart is a very important and increasingly important topic in coffee, which is so sensitive to temperature differences, right? So we used to have some climate smart criteria, but it's now much more integrated. Human rights, as I just told, we're introducing this new concept of assess and address, which is really innovative. Then deforestation, we're going a step further in safeguarding the remaining forest, because our new program not only prohibits deforestation, but also destruction of all natural ecosystems, including wetlands and peatlands, which are so important in order to prevent the emission of gases, right? So this means that more land will be protected. And on biodiversity, it's woven into our new standard with several criteria, both preventing negative impacts from farming on biodiversity as well as fostering positive ones. And then, of course, we have the living income and the living wage concepts, trying to really guarantee a minimum level beyond the minimum wage, really looking like what is needed in order to have a decent living, guarantee that for both producers and workers. But those concepts are introduced in a very gradual manner, because we do not want to put the producers in a position where it's not feasible anymore for them to do farming, right? Economic profitability always is the first bottom level to guarantee before we can require other concepts. And then this new standard is really building on the idea of continuous improvement. We know that sustainability is not just one stop and that's it. There can always be a deepening of the sustainability. We recognize that it's a path. For producer groups, the path can be much longer, especially those who live in very remote area, in order to make sure that our standard is inclusive enough to keep the producers that we're working with, the producers that we want to work with. And to close, the whole standard is implemented in a risk-based approach. And that means that when new farms or already farms in our system register in our new traceability system, they have to fill out a list of questions which will characterize their farm or their supply chain, if it's supply chain actor. And with that, they will receive a list of questions which will only apply to them. Really focused, and the assurance will also be focused, so that we really emphasize on the most important issues to address, and that the audit is not just this long list of questions, yes, no, yes, no. Also try in an effort to search for the opportunity to make as much impact as possible. Yes, so a forest is a natural ecosystem for us in this context, right? Natural forests possess many of the characteristics of a native forest, but it's not only native forest. So for us, a natural forest can include a primary forest that has not been subject to any major human impact, but also regenerative forests, or managed forest in natural ways. So we work a lot also with producers where trees can be extracted in a sustainable manner. Forests that have been partially degraded, and some of these natural forests that may be aligned with the high carbon stock approach, which most generally includes very specific land categories, medium density forest, low density forest. So that is a whole analysis, and in some cases are based on the risk analysis. Our auditors will have to do this very, very deep dive analysis, whether there is such an area in a region or in a landscape where a certificate holder is placed. And that's also why geolocation data, digital geolocation data, is becoming increasingly not only important but only mandatory for the producers who are in our system, in order to identify if the producers are in one of these areas. Yeah, so for us, it's really important to envision sustainability from as I mentioned, from an integrated perspective. Sustainability for us has to do with economic, social, and environmental aspects. And it refers with the idea that through using your production system, profitability is increased, social conditions are improved, and the longevity of the environment is guaranteed. So that's why we have criteria related to all those topics: biodiversity conservation, improved livelihood and human well-being, natural resource conservation, effective farming and farm management systems, etc. Yes, and I think here we cannot speak about history. You said things used to be captured on paper. That still happens, and we have seen, we know that there are groups that have piles and piles of paper and have difficulties to extract the data from it, just as you say. And for that reason, digitalization is at the heart of our new certification system. So we're currently preparing digital tools for traceability, to capture geolocation data, and also for farm to help them to digitalize internal management system data, so farm data. And we will make those digital tools available for those producers who have not yet access to it. And we will require, over a course of 6 years, for all the farmers to digitalize all their information. 6 years sounds a lot, and it will obviously, we will try to speed it up as much as possible, but we do recognize that there are groups, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Kenya, where they have sometimes groups of 44,000, or in Kenya we have a group of 600,000 producers, where digitalization is difficult. Remote areas, so in those cases we do give more time, and we try to really demonstrate the benefit. And it has been interesting because with the COVID situation that we're currently living, it has become quite clear to us that it's actually amazing how deep we can reach, and how many producers have some type of phone or digital tool that they can participate in our webinars. So digitalization is really upcoming, and we are working very hard to make it happen. Yes, yes. So we have introduced two policies. So the first one is a policy for those regions where in-person audit cannot happen. The producers can use their current certificate for more time, until the end of this year, and they can apply for that. But in that case, they can only use 50% after the original expiration date. They can only use 50% of their volumes, and in order to use their whole volumes, they can apply for a desk audit, depending on the risk. And I'm saying this I'm saying this carefully, as you can imagine, there's risks to that. So depending on the risk, they will be eligible for such a desk audit. And in those cases, if they pass that desk audit, they will be able to use the whole volumes. And in some cases, we also combine. There are already areas where audits can be done. So we try to be very flexible and balance the risks with the flexibility that we need, right? On the other hand, there's also a criteria for supply. So that's a policy for farm certificate holders. Then we also have a policy for supply chain actors, which is a force majeure criteria, and a policy, and refers to a more flexible use of the exact amount of coffee in their packages. But I don't have the detail. I can send it to you later. And then besides that, we have started an emergency fund for everybody who's interested to support us on that. It hasn't been made very public. We have like $80,000, I think, which we currently have used for most vulnerable groups in some of the risk areas. I know that we have supported a big group in India with sanitation supplies, and I think also a group in West Africa and in Latin America, and we can provide also more information on that. We have many requests from producer groups to provide them support. harvest is upcoming of coffee in Central America, in Vietnam, and some other countries. We are super concerned, and those farms need those sanitation tools. So that's how we want to support them. Companies also have been super supportive, like traders. They're also helping producers a lot, and we really want to collaborate with them and with you and with everybody. Yes, so the app was originally designed really to exchange knowledge. We uploaded all our digital training tools, which all our tools are digitally available, openly available for everybody. And there was also a space for producers to upload their own videos to interchange knowledge between producers, which is something they really like producer learning from producers. We did. And it has been successful in Indonesia and in some parts of Africa, but we noticed that there was more request for supporting producers with digitalizing their information, as we just discussed. So that's something that we are now testing with KTDA, that's the Kenyan Tea Development Agency, where we have many producers, and with support of the Sweden Post Lottery, we have been testing how that is working, and that's going well. So based on that experience, the same team is now building that out in what we call the Farmer Intelligent app, which will be used in our new certification system to support producers in capturing and digitalizing their system. That information can be uploaded to our traceability system, and conclusions can be easily taken from that. So it will automatically demonstrate which are the recurrent non-compliances, which are the most pressing urgent issues to address. And we also want to include some economic indicators in order for farmers to support them to do the analysis of the profitability of their farm and to identify key inefficiencies. Where did they invest too much? Really take decisions for farm management based on the information of their own farm. Okay, so there's a two-way response to this. I will respond a bit about what we do with blockchain, but before I get to that, I first want to mention that we have also upgraded our own and designed our own new traceability and transparency platform, which is called MultiTrace. And all the supply chain actors, from producers to roasters, they all have to upload their information in our traceability system in order to be able to be audited, etc. So how do we manage the confidentiality of data? So only those who are in one and the same supply chain can see the information, their own information, and we will only publish consolidated information, so at country level. So really, confidential information will not be available for everybody. But we do want to increase transparency on data, and we are currently exploring which data can become more transparent, how can we do that exactly to address the question that you asked. The balance, right, between transparency and not, and respecting also, not compromising privacy, as you say. So that's in our system for all our supply chain actors and for all our producers. On top of that, we are also doing some pilots and starting some pilots actually related to blockchain and new technology. But in this case, we are approaching the topic of innovation through seeking collaborations with organizations who are specialized in that, right? We are not specialized in making our own blockchain, but there are many companies out there with whom we are seeking collaboration. And by collaborating with these kind of organizations, we put our producers and supply chain actors at the heart of these innovations. So, for example, we are currently experimenting a couple of blockchain innovations with tip to producers and some others, and trying to connect consumers with farmers. And we have an innovation team who is leading these kind of collaborations and who are exploring and seeking where is the best way to go. Yes. So we have two new requirements in our new certification system. The first is sustainability differential, which is a differential, an in-cash differential, which needs to be identified both in our traceability system as well as on paper, which is checked by the auditors. It can be digital paper, but like an invoice, the two things need to align, where the first buyer of the product makes a differentiated payment of a cash amount. So it's not just part of the price, it's differentiated. And this sustainability differentiate needs to go to the producers, the whole amount. So in the case of the producer group, this amount cannot stay at the level of the group, of the certificate holder, but it has to go everything to the producers themselves. That's the first piece. And then there is the sustainability investment. And that sustainability investment goes to the certificate holder. So in the case of the group, it will go to the group administrator. And part of it can go in cash or in kind to the producers. That is a decision that they would have to make as a group. But it can that sustainability investment is also meant to support the certificate holder in the many costs that they have to do, right? So the internal audit is really expensive. They have to do internal inspection of all the producers, the audit itself, and also oftentimes they provide fertilizers, or they do the pesticide application to all the producers. So that's meant that sustainability investment is meant to support the groups or the individual producer with those costs. Yeah, that's a real urgent issue that we're trying to address. Obviously, here it's so important that we have complementary interventions, right? Those are typically topics where we can have criteria, and we need to have criteria in our standard, but where we complement action through projects. So, for example, on gender equity, in our new standard, we have enhanced new criteria which support producers to map and to identify gender imbalances. We require a gender committee, which can lead these kind of the identification of risks, such as gender discrimination, dangerous situations for women and children that have to be solved, etc., etc. But based on the risk analysis that we do, we also prioritize certain areas for obtaining additional donor and company funding for complementary projects. And we have good experiences with that. And for example, these projects can include awareness raising, including women in training on bookkeeping, or making training specifically tailored for women on the times that suits them, with the levels that's connected to their level of education. And we have seen that especially the topic of bookkeeping is a really a good way to empower women. Normally they like to do that kind of activity. It comes quite natural to them also when the producer's demand is on the farm, and it also gives them much more insight in the actual household economics. So that's just an example. So it's really all about involving, identifying risk, making tailored training, and trying to get them as much as possible out of that situation. But here is also a topic where partnerships with other specialized organizations is really important. Yes, this topic, as most of the topics we have discussed, is actually a key topic in our recently published coffee strategy, because it's not only soil degradation, but it's also climate change and the increased temperatures, which force the producers to move up the hills to look for those places where they can continue to produce the quality that they're used to. And in those areas is exactly where the forests are, and not only the forest, also the water basins of the villages below, right? So also here we have a combined approach. For deforestation, we have enhanced criteria in our standard, which I already explained. We have complementary projects, watershed projects, where we also, which is one of the places where we involve the local government. So, for example, we've just finished a project in Peru, which was funded by a donor, Dunkin' Brands in this case, and it had a landscape approach. So in those landscape approaches, we have concrete actions such as planting, fencing the water capture areas, reforestation. But to make those activities sustainable and really involving the local people, we create, for example, what we call, how do you say that in English? Discussion tables or decision-making tables at municipal level or at regional level. And in that we include the local and the regional governments. We include representatives of the coffee industry, of the producers, of the local government. We support them to draft a plan for the landscape management, and based on that, we implement concrete action, but according to the plan they make themselves, really focused on avoiding deforestation and protecting the watershed and increasing reforestation. Yes, absolutely. The ICO has just had a meeting, and one of my colleagues who's part also of the coffee sector team has participated in it. We have signed also the London Declaration. We are part of it. We are currently discussing together with them an action plan that we can put in place to support the implementation of this. And this is also why, for example, the concept of living income is in our new standard. Living income is not yet an obligatory criteria, but we do invite companies to make the payment at least in order to as high enough at least in order to guarantee to cover the cost of production. But in order for that, we need data, right? So again, that's why the digitalization is so important. We are starting some pilots, studies, collaborating also with other organizations who are working a lot on this, collaborating also with IDH, GCP, and with that data and those studies, some companies are calling out to us and saying, we are interested to actually do some minimum payment, make payment to living income. So we're starting to work with those companies, which might also eventually lead to for those companies to be able to make an additional claim. That's a new topic that we are currently designing, what we call differentiated claims. So those farmers or companies who are able to do the additional mile on a specific topic, which can be living income, it can be regenerative agriculture, or it can be some other topic, could be able to make a differentiated claim. This is a very new topic. We are just designing it. I think it will take 1 or 2 years before we can make it happen, but we're definitely on that path. And the London Declaration is definitely on the spot for that one. Yeah, that is actually, I think, the most difficult question that you're asking me, because who can look into the future, right? But what we can see is demand of coffee continues to increase, but the coffee prices remain really low. And with that, especially in areas where production is so expensive, eventually producers will opt out of coffee. There might be a move to Robusta coffee. Arabica, especially specialty coffee, might become, with continuing climate change, a luxury. So I think that there could be a shift to a different type of coffee, to some countries getting out of coffee. I'm living here in Costa Rica, and I've seen many coffee areas disappearing. I'm living myself in an area which used to be coffee. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm super optimistic, but we just try to do the best to continue to support producers in making this a viable living.